I am going to Moscow. We shall see if he will look death in the face with as much indifference now when he is on the eve of being married as he did once with his cherries. Hello, and welcome back to my Lit series, where I talk about the works of Russian literature that are classic but less known in English translations. If you came across this channel for the first time, please check 2 previous episodes, where I talk about the novella The Shot by Alexander Pushkin. Also, I do recommend reading the story. The link to the translation is in the video description below. So, last time we talked about the duels, both fictional and real, and how they punctuated Pushkin's life. Today I focus more on the personality of Silvio, the protagonist of this story. First of all, what happened after he refused to shoot a young officer because he saw no fear in his face? He retired from the army and lived haunted by the idea of a revenge. The letter that prompted him to leave the regiment that the narrator was part of was a notice that a certain person was going to be married to a young and beautiful girl. "You can guess," said Silvio, "who the certain person is. I am going to Moscow. We shall see if he will look death in the face with as much indifference now when he is on the eve of being married as he did once with his cherries." And this is how the theme of revenge is introduced. Pushkin was an innovator. At that time, the idea of psychological confrontation was almost unheard of in Russian literature. The main satisfaction for Silvio is not a chance to kill his offender, but a possibility to glare at his despair and fear, now that he is about to be married. Later, in the psychological treatment of revenge, the subtle nuances of relationship will come up in Mikhail Lermontov's A Hero of Our Time, which we will definitely talk about when we get to that point. So Silvio leaves, and just like in the Queen of Spades, the narrative lens moves to a different setting. Instead of being with the regiment, the narrator is now living by himself in a small village. Bored by the monotonous life, he desperately seeks some distraction and entertainment. Having experienced exile, Pushkin describes the state of mind of a lonely man with his usual precision. "Until the hour for dinner, I managed to pass away the time somehow or other, talking with the bailiff, riding about to inspect the work, or going round to look at the new buildings. But as soon as it began to get dark, I positively did not know what to do with myself. The few books that I had found in the cupboards and storerooms I already knew by heart. All the story that my housekeeper Kirillovna could remember I had heard over and over again." The boredom of a country life is suddenly interrupted by the arrival of a count and a countess, a young couple, to their summer estate. Excited by the perspective to meet a young and attractive woman, the narrator does not hide that this is his main goal. Goes to introduce himself and meet this family. After the first feeling of awkwardness, they get to know each other, and then the narrator notices a curious painting on the wall, with 2 bullets stuck on top of each other. The precise character of the shot reminds him of Silvio, and when the Count hears his name, he is visibly distressed. Very soon he confesses that it was him who slapped Silvio and had an unfinished duel, and that Silvio did show up at his house 5 years ago, during the honeymoon. As I said, Silvio's characterization does invoke the idea of a Byronic hero, but yet there is also a hint of a parody in this figure, as I told you in the first episode. When Silvio narrates the story of this duel with the Count, we are struck with the vast difference between these 2 characters. The Count is relaxed and confident, while Silvio is stressed and insecure. The incident that causes the duel is in fact entirely Silvio's fault. In his narrative, he admits having provoked the fight between the Count and himself. "I took a hatred to him. His success in the regiment and in the society of ladies brought me to the verge of despair. I began to seek a quarrel with him, To my epigrams he replied with epigrams which always seemed to me more spontaneous and more cutting than mine, and which were decidedly more amusing, for he joked while I fumed. At last, at a ball given by a Polish landed proprietor, seeing him the object of the attention of all the ladies, and especially of the mistress of the house, with whom I was upon very good terms, I whispered some grossly insulting remark in his ear. He flamed up and gave me a slap in the face. That's how their fight started. And then, as we know, the Count exhibits no fear when faced with the threat of death before his duel with Silvio. Thus we see how the theme of not just revenge but also of jealousy is introduced. In one of Little Tragedies, the short dramas in verse, Pushkin writes about Mozart and Salieri, also a famous composer and Mozart's contemporary. In this piece, Salieri, torn between his admiration of Mozart's genius and his envy for his talent, plots out a murder and gives Mozart a poisoned glass of wine. Just like in the shot, these two characters are the complete opposites of each other. Mozart is an easygoing, happy, mindless young man, while Salieri is middle-aged, hardworking, desperately trying to achieve something that Mozart achieves just by the power of his talent. If you've seen Milos Forman's Amadeus, you'd know what I'm talking about. Forman polarizes these two characters even more, but the idea is the same. As far as I have read, by the way, Salieri did not kill Mozart. This was just a myth. Another situation where a duel and its tragic consequences are provoked is Eugene Onegin, yes, and the novel in verse, Pushkin's novel in verse. Onegin teases his younger friend Lenski up to the point when he challenges him to a duel. The tendency to provoke tragedies and death definitely belongs to a Byronic hero's realm. However, the underlying causes of hatred or envy are usually more sublime than how Silvio feels about the Count. As Jeff Love, whom I cited in the first episode, notes, Silvio's motivations are fed by a ferocious jealousy, not the heroic jealousy of the prerogatives of God, but the all too human jealousy of the prerogatives of the rich and gifted. In this crucial difference between the metaphysical pathos, the tragic heroism that adorns the true Byronic hero, and the rather base pathos one might associate with Silvio's jealousy, lies the parody, the comical doubling that further belittles Silvio in the light of the Byronic image that seems thrust upon him, that shows him off once again as a rather petty demon. And thus his unwillingness to fight with his offender in the beginning of the story, his petty jealousy to the Count, and his desire not just to kill his enemy but to break his joyous spirit, make his demonic nature almost ridiculous and parodic, despite the horror that he inflicts upon the Count and his wife. And here you go. Again, I'm not going to give away the conclusion of this story. Look it up and enjoy the wonderfully elegant style on Pushkin's prose. I just wanted to call your attention to the fact that we need to keep in mind who the narrator in the story is. In fact, there are three narrators: Lieutenant Colonel ILP, who is the main narrator of the shot, then Silvio, and then the Count. Each of them influences the story in their own way. Silvio, as I said, is consumed by anger and revenge. The Count is haunted by a traumatic memory, while the lieutenant sees everything through a romantic lens, at least at the beginning of the story. Every narrator makes us believe him, and then doubt, and then realize the reasons why the story is told this way or that way. Pushkin's prose is both dense and lightweight, and you need to peel the layers off to get to his irony, his witty vision of the world. So, that's it for today. I hope you have enjoyed this episode, and I hope that this short analysis will make you interested in Pushkin's prose. Would you like me to talk about other Pushkin's works? Let me know in the comments below. And join me next time to talk about one more story from the Belkin Tales called The Snowstorm. See you next time. Bye bye.